Welcome to the Unlocking Wealth podcast. Thanks for joining us. We will motivate and inspire you as we share strategies from successful and wealthy individuals. Here is your host, David Ordonez, an entrepreneur and real estate investor.
Welcome to a new episode of the Unlocking Wealth podcast. As a real estate investor, it is very important that you choose the right partners, and it's essential to your success to select a good lender. We have trusted InstaLend for our lending needs, and they have become our preferred lender for our real estate investments.
InstaLend is your private lending partner, where you can get a loan commitment the same day and close within days. Grow your real estate portfolio with InstaLend. Tell us about your project. We lend on all product types, from short-term, fix and flip, and 30-year rental loans across single and multifamily properties. We also lend on ground-up construction and work with first-time and experienced operators. Our loan products are also available for foreign national investors. InstaLend, your preferred partner for an insta-good experience. For more information, visit instalend.com.
Hello, today I have Devon Dickinson as our guest. I'm really excited for him to be here. He's a serial entrepreneur. He has over 6-7 companies that he's founded, and he also does some real estate commercial investment. And I'm so happy to have you, man. Thanks for joining us today.
Great, thanks for having me.
Great. Well, let's start with your story. I gave a very short bio of what you have become. You're an entrepreneur. You didn't start as an entrepreneur, right? I mean, do you come from a family of entrepreneurs, or how was your beginnings? Share with us, man.
Yeah. So thanks for again having me. So my story is pretty simple. I actually I came from a super small town, and it was not like I didn't know a lot of folks that were kind of business owners or super successful, but I grew up with very blue collar area of the world.
Ohio? Is Ohio?
Ohio. Yep. It was very blue collar, but hardworking. Like my folks, I think between them, 30 some years of working, I think between my mom and my dad, they might have missed 5 days of work in like 30 years. So it was just very driven into me, like hard work, dedication, and also a frugal mindset, right? Like make the most with what you've been given. And my mom used to always tell me that who much is given, much is expected. And so that was always kind of the mantra that I adopted. But inside of me, I had this desire to start companies, like to build an empire. Like I really wanted to create something special, and I wanted to have, the ability to kind of control my schedule, my own outcome, my own earning ability. And so I went off to college, did kind of the traditional thing. And from the time I was like 16 through college, I had started a few different companies, like some of them actually had some decent legs and probably had the ability to kind of go somewhere. But me personally, I wasn't at a place of maturity, where I was ready to take them, and thank.
But how important were those experiences, though, right?
Oh yeah, they gave me the vision that like you could do it, but it also showed me that like it's not necessarily about the idea, but around the execution of the idea and the people behind the idea. And I had to look myself in the mirror and go, these could be great ideas, but I'm not mature enough and disciplined enough, and I don't understand the way that the world works enough to kind of be the leader that I need to be to be a great entrepreneur. So, I actually got married and went and took a job in corporate America, but it was a very deliberate decision. I took that job with the understanding that I wanted to learn business better. I wanted to become more disciplined. I wanted to more well-round myself out so that when I did make that entrepreneurial jump, that I had a firm foundation of who I was, and that I wasn't going to be the reason that the business didn't succeed, So I did that I did that for about 4 or 5 years, and then finally took the leap. And from there, had, my ups and downs like anybody, but for the most part, we've had, a few more ups and downs. I would tell you that, we currently own, I think right now I'm either running or invested or own about 6 different companies. And over the course of time, I probably have been involved with about 10 or so startups that we've either, have become successful and we've sold, or we've evolved into other organizations, or, we continue to operate and hold today. But, along the way, there's been a lot of ups and downs. And
I'm sure. Now, what was the first company that you founded? So, what, you got out of corporate America, and then what year is when you decided this is it? I'm going on the entrepreneurship.
Probably my first real successful company, because there was a lot of, baby infant companies that never quite developed. But I would say my first real one that ended up being successful and running for many years and becoming lucrative was called Safety Services. It was in the OSHA compliance space.
Okay.
And, it kind of goes back to my earlier point when it probably wasn't the best idea I've ever had.
Okay.
There's some ideas that are like revolutionary, right? Like, I don't think this idea was probably the greatest idea, but we executed really well and we worked our tails off. And eventually, 10 years later, had a very lucrative exit. So, it was one of those where it was an absolute soup to nuts. Took it from, cradle to grave story, and it was wonderful. We had a really great exit that then allowed me to, kind of be at a different point in my life, so that we could have seed money for other ventures.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was the starting point for you. I mean, once you sold that company, right? Did you sell it? Okay.
Yep.
All right. And then with that, where you were able to go and create other companies, other ventures.
Yeah. It's funny
That's a cool
because
story.
During that time, I was really had a great deal of anxiety around, well, what's going to happen now, right? When I sell this, what's next? And then I finally got peace with that and thought, you know what? I'm just going to take some time off. I'm really going to find myself. And funny thing is 2 weeks afterwards, I started another company. So,
It's the entrepreneurship is once it's in your blood, you can't stop, right? I mean, you got to keep going, doing new stuff, new ideas, So what was your second company after? So what was your first company after you sold Safety Services?
So my second relatively successful company. So we've had, I think, 3 different companies that have all been on the Inc. 5000 fastest growing list. So I think between all the companies, I think we've been on there now like 18 different times.
Okay.
And I would say 3 of them have been very successful. The other one was called National Marketing Solutions, and it was kind of birthed from what we were doing out of safety. As oftentimes entrepreneurs experience, as they see opportunities in what they're currently doing to spin off organizations, maybe replace a vendor and become their own vendor, maybe better a service or quality offering. And that's what this was. We spun it off. And what happened was we actually had a great deal of success around that company. But I personally wasn't satisfied with it as a long-term play. Like, I felt like we needed to evolve it. And then I took those assets and those people and the resources and eventually morphed it into another company that's called Verified First. And that's kind of one of our big successes that we have today. It's, been, definitely a disruptor in the space. And the other thing I would say as an entrepreneur, like, you learn way more from your mistakes than you do your successes.
Correct. Yep.
Your successes are almost dangerous, right? Because they provide you this false sense of security, and they trick you into thinking, becoming prideful and maybe thinking something that you don't. Whereas the successes really make you reflect upon what went wrong? What would I do differently? I'm sorry, the failures make
the mistakes.
The mistakes make you reflect upon what went wrong. What would I do differently? And so that's really where we took this new company. I learned there was so many things I said, if I get another chance at running a company, I'm never going to make these mistakes again, And so when I went in, I did things a little differently, a little slower. And the nice thing about kind of that second round, when you actually have financing, behind you, your own, you've got capital supporting you, is you don't have the same pressures, right? So the first company I had, you have to decide, am I going to expand my sales operation, or am I going to take money out and put braces on my kid? Right?
I know. Yeah. It's the truth. I mean, it's real conversations actually happens, in the life of a small business owner. Yeah, that's.
But that
100%.
second time, we got to do things a little differently. And this one, we really, we're well capitalized. We could be patient, really develop our product offering, our back end, our infrastructure, keep our data clean, our IT clean, invest in software that we really needed from the beginning, instead of kind of trying to build the plane while it's in the air. We got to, build it before it totally took off.
Yeah.
So this second, that one has been very, in a lot of ways similar. But like I said, the difference I feel on the second round is that we were able to learn from our mistakes in the first one.
Okay. And now you stayed in the same industry, right? I mean, you stayed in the same space. You already dominated the space. You already knew the industry where you were. So it made sense to kind of transition to this new company, but in the same space.
Same general space.
Same general space. Okay. And then as you are building with obviously more capital, Verify First, you're also venturing out in other companies, right? I mean, I see that you have Busy Bees babysitting app, which has nothing to do with the space where you are right now, right? I mean, so you're starting to venture in different companies. How is that experience going? How are you identifying opportunities? What are you doing to identify different opportunities and to kind of grow your portfolio of companies?
Yeah, that one in particular, I recently exited from. But what has happened is there's been a lot of opportunities similar to that, where once you start to build a network of people, there's lots of opportunities where people come to you. And so for me, I don't particularly I'm not just like a lender. Like when people come to me, I don't want to just ever lend money. It's not what I do. But people always want to come to me with business ideas, and I'm very happy to help with them. Right. So I'll do consulting, I'll help, introduce them to folks, maybe introduce them to clients, try to get companies off the ground, that are just friends of mine. And as these, relationships develop, sometimes opportunities present themselves to then say, hey, actually, maybe I'll come in and invest in your company. I'll be a part of it. But I personally don't enjoy just lending because I'm not a bank, right? That's just not what I want to do. Mm-hmm. But if I can provide value and capital, then I'm very interested. And so that's where these other opportunities come. So generally a couple times a year, one or two opportunities will present themselves that are interesting enough for me to perhaps become involved in some fashion.
Okay, so you would provide some seed money for these new companies, and at the same time you will bring your value, your expertise as a consultant to the company or the new startup or venture.
Correct.
Okay. Yep. Perfect. No, that's very interesting. Now, you currently live. Where do you live now, Devon? And you're still in Arizona, or where do you live now?
I live in Arizona, and the interesting thing is, a lot of the companies have now started to be in different locations, and I was someone who was adamantly opposed from remote work. I grew up in business in the 90s, and, I just couldn't see how you could get the synergies and you could get the accountability when people were remote. And so when COVID hit us, we had no choice. You know? And now almost everything that we do in all of our companies are remote. And in most all of them, as much as it pains me to say, I probably wouldn't go back to face because, from a bottom line standpoint, it's just better, right? From a headache standpoint and HR standpoint, it's better. Now I would tell you, it's not without its challenges, but it also a lot from a human capital standpoint, you're able to find talent that, might be international.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I agree.
Talent, on different parts of the country. And so, once I kind of got comfortable with that, I had to evolve once again as an entrepreneur. And it's kind of what I was saying before. Like before, I only knew success one way, and I'm like, this is how it's done, And it wasn't until something forced me to look at it a different way that COVID ended up, in a lot of ways, being one of the best things that happened to some of our companies.
Oh yeah, I agree. So. Well, that's when, crisis meets opportunity, right? I mean, that's really what happens. And then you're forced to think differently and being more creative, which kind of forces our creativity to kick in. And so how many employees does Verify First has now currently?
Probably around 140 or so.
And they're all remote?
For all intents and purposes, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, sadly, we actually had signed office space, and then we doubled our office space 3 weeks before COVID hit. So,
and the office, the headquarters are in Arizona.
So ironically, that is actually in Idaho.
Idaho. Okay. All right. Okay. Now, what are the challenges that you're seeing in your industry coming this year, or what do you foresee in the next 2-3 years? What are the challenges specifically in your area?
I think this isn't just true in my industry; it's true in everybody's industry. One of the reasons why we have had success is because we have disruptive technology. Okay. And so that allowed us to kind of make a huge impact, a huge splash very quickly, and really acquire clients because you have a great story to tell. Now, I would say as great as that's been, that's now everyone's concern, right? Which company out there is going to somehow be the next disruptor? Which company out there or what technology could perhaps, knock you down a few notches, right? And so I think really trying to understand, the competitive space is way different than it used to be. Like when I first started business, 20 some years ago, understanding the competitive space was really kind of understanding your product and your sales and marketing plan versus someone else's product and sales and marketing plan, and just making sure that your product was at least equal, but your sales and marketing plan had a nice spin to it, and you could go out there and motivate them to do better, right? So it was very similar, right? But now, because technology is moving so quickly, there's this X factor that, like, boom, can come and change an industry overnight. And so as I think about what folks ought to be concerned about in the future, it's those X factors, like trying to keep an eye out for what are the X factors, or silver bullets, I call them, that can that sneak up on you and get you, So, there's always economy, right? Like people are always worried about, inflation or what's, if the interest rates go up, what's going to happen, right? But the economy's done this for years, right? Like
historically. Yep.
I mean, there's ups, there's downs, there's ups, there's downs. For, the history of the economy has always kind of done this, right? Yeah. So that's not something new, but what we are experiencing, like I said, is these silver bullet X factor game changers that come in and literally wipe out industries. So those are.
So you gotta be always, kind of like cautious, or you're always looking to see what's coming up in the new technology space, especially in your industry, to be on the offensive as soon as they come up. Now you brought a good point in terms of COVID created an opportunity of you hiring people from different places that can bring so much to your company, right? And they can be internationally, right? That also can be also used against you, because other companies might be doing the same thing and hiring better international, doing better training internationally, and getting cheaper in a way human capital. Yeah. And so that's a game changer for me. I mean, in a lot of industries,
For sure. And I think it's one, like I said, where we have to change the way that we think, right? There's that expression that no man walks into the same river twice, because we change as people and the river changes, right? And so I actually, 15 years ago, did a ton of work internationally. And then I stopped doing it for probably 8 years. And in my mind, I thought, well, that just doesn't work that great because of X, Y, Z, right? And so again, I started thinking, the way that I used to think, instead of understanding that, wait, no man walks in the same river twice, right?
Yeah.
And so to go back and to hire internationally or to hire, remotely was a challenge for me, because I had to change the way I thought. Like, I'm like, it just didn't work out because of them. But I'm like, no, things have changed. And now the good thing is, it's actually, now that we've re-engaged and we are doing it, we're doing it better than we've ever done it, because of those mistakes we made before. But I had to break my own mindset and go, wait, just because it didn't work the way I wanted to last time doesn't mean it won't work this time. Because I know I'm different and the world is different. And sure enough, it has.
Now, what you said is also kind of acknowledging humility, right? Like, I made a mistake, I didn't know how to do it, now I can do. So how you come to that point? Because I meet so many entrepreneurs that are always right, they have arrogance, and unfortunately they're gonna make a lot of mistakes, and sometimes they don't even acknowledge that. So what got you to grow, spiritually and in a mindset where you can actually say, you know what, you own everything, I own my mistakes, I own what I did wrong, and now this is the way I need to do it because I'm humble enough to learn, right? How do you become that? How do you grow to that? Because it takes time, maturity, obviously, right?
Yeah, that's funny. I always, people ask me stuff. So I just turned 50 years old recently, like a couple of months ago. I was actually went to your brothers were at my birthday party.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
cool. Happy belated, man.
Yeah,
50. You. Wow.
But it's funny because when I was in my 30s, like, I knew everything, right? Like, I was so prideful. I knew everything, right? And people ask me questions all the time. They're like, hey, Devon, what do you think about this, that, and the other? And I tell them, I'm like, well, you should ask me when I was like 35, because I knew everything then. I don't know anything now. and really, I think as I reflect over the successes of my life, they have been in spite of me, not because of me. And, we've been very blessed. I feel like God has directed my paths. I personally have to constantly keep myself in check, because when I become prideful, like, listen, it's not that, I'm not smart. It's not that I don't have good ideas, but my pride it blinds me, right? And it keeps you from listening to others. It keeps you from, having an open mind. And within humility, I think, is when you have to seek counsel, right? You have to, and it's not just from, people above you, or like, it's so people that work for you, right? Like, and a lot of times, like, entrepreneurs would be like, no, I'm the boss. Like, that's going to be weakness if I need to go to the people that work for me. Like, I don't want to show weakness. And to me, that shows confidence and confidence in them. And also humility in yourself, that you do know that you are open, that you don't know everything. And, I try to make my decisions collectively. Like, even if you were to go into our office that we do have in Idaho, we don't have like a desk, right? Where, like, that that big desk like in Wall Street where Michael Douglas sits behind it, so power
makes
desk,
all the decisions.
Exactly. Like it's just not what we do, right? We actually have one room, a bunch of whiteboards, and we have sofas. Everybody kind of sits in and we make decisions. We make decisions as a team. At the end of the day, I kind of have that final vote, but I want to hear what everyone has to say, because I know that I don't know, right? Like I've made enough of those prideful decisions. And, and the other thing I would say is to be quick to change when you're wrong, right? Like this is true in business. It's true in parenting.
Life,
I had this situation where I have teenage kids now, right? And
wow.
The last thing you want to do is go to the teenage kid and say, hey, I was wrong. But I found myself doing that, right? Like in business and with my children and in my marriage, right? And in this kind of transparency and humility, it raises other people up around you and allows them to be confident in their voice, right? Yeah. And it also shows that you are confident enough in who you are that you're okay to admit that you're right and that you're wrong, right? And so I think it actually, in some ways, elevates your leadership, by being able to show that transparency.
Yeah. No, I agree. And that's the challenge of that integrity, right? To be consistent at business, family, personal, right? I mean, that's really to be a person with integrity when you're able to do that in the three areas of your life. And obviously it's a challenge. But what do you do, Devon, to keep yourself? I mean, what habits have you developed throughout the years on your business career and personal as well? Habits or what do you keep? How you keep yourself motivated? I mean, how do you wake up every morning with the same level of motivation that you did yesterday? Mm-hmm. What do you do?
Yeah. So there's a ton of self-reflection there, right? And motivation. For me personally, I wake up in the morning. I do my morning devotional. So I spend time with reading the Bible, spend time in prayer, and then after that, I reflect upon that. So if I'm actually looking right now, you can kind of see like my whiteboards. I write reflection up there and challenging myself up there, and really kind of continuing to try to keep that humility, but also that forward-looking view. Like I don't ever want to be known for what I did. I want to always be doing something moving forward, and not for like wins and losses, but really just because I feel like my mom said, too much is given, much is required, right? And I really do feel like we have this responsibility every day to give our best, right? And to not waste that day. And so when I start off my morning that way, it allows me to operate at my fullest. Now, I would tell you at 50 years old, I operate a lot differently than I did when I was 30, And I would also tell you, I've learned over years to live probably a more diverse life, right? Like you can't work constantly, right? So we take tons of, I love traveling. I love doing stuff with my family. And over the last 6 or 7 years, what I've added to my life has been coaching, And so people are always like, oh, you need a hobby. And I'm like, I don't know, man, I'm not going to go golf. I'm just not good at that. I'm not going to do woodworking. I can't tinker around the house. I just break crap, right? That's not me. But I fell in love with coaching, and it's this passion that I have that frankly, in a lot of ways, probably provides more stress than work, right? But it's it gives me this
a lot of commitment.
Yeah.
A lot of commitment for coaching.
Teaches me a ton, right? There's so many lessons from business that I get to apply every day to coaching, and so many lessons from coaching that I get to apply to business, and both to family and all of that. And so
what sport? Yep. What sport you're coaching? What sport?
Soccer. Yep.
Soccer. Okay. Yeah. Is kids or teenagers?
Varsity high school. Yeah.
Varsity High School. Oh man, that's amazing. Yep, yep. And it's cool. Actually, I had Diana a few weeks ago on the podcast talking about soccer. Obviously.
Yeah, I'm really hoping to be able to go see her play World Cup in New Zealand next year.
Yes, that would be awesome. Yeah, that's great. Well, that's great. I mean, so and once you realize, and it changed a lot of things for me on the motivation side. Once you realize that every day is a gift given to us, and that you might not be here tomorrow, it just changes your perspective on how you wake up in the morning, and so you show grateful, you're grateful, and then obviously you move, and then the level of motivation just increases automatically, because once you realize that this is all you have, this is the day that it was made for you to rejoice, it just changes your perspective of everything, and is a gift, for sure. I mean, it can be personal development, it can be business related. Why don't you share with us a few books that you enjoy or that you read over and over, or that have kind of impacted your life, made a huge impact on your spiritual or your business, life.
It's funny. When I was in, 15 years ago, I used to be a huge reader, and especially of business books. And here's the thing, don't take this the wrong way, because I think there's a lot of great, there's a lot of people that really should get down and read, 200 pages. For me, I didn't have the attention span, I realized. And I also realized that in a lot of these business books, within the first 30 pages, you would get the principle, and then the next 170 was just filler, so they could call it a book. So what I actually did is I kind of cheated, and it's called Get Abstract. You probably have heard of it, right? But it's yeah.
Give you the bullet points of the books. Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah,
somebody's right. And I feel like a cheater, but I actually then don't even get the book. I get the audio. So someone reads the audio to me in about 8 to 12 minutes, and almost always I take get my phone out and take 2 or 3 bullet points. I'm like, there's my takeaways, and then I'm done, right? And then I'm on to the next one. And people are always like, did you read that book? And I'm like, I don't know. I think I did, but and then I realized, I heard the book summary, right? But you get these 1 or 2 principles that really work for you. Yeah. And that's kind of what I do. I like I said, I think I'm a cheater.
Any of them that you actually enjoyed a lot? I mean, that would you like to share? Any particular?
So rather than go there, I'm gonna give you another thing. So here's my guilty pleasure, is TikTok.
Okay.
This turned into my guilty pleasure, but it does the exact same thing, where there's a lot of great entrepreneurs that I follow on there, like Gary Vaynerchuk and some other guys. That I really I don't align with everything that they do, but every time they say something, I'm like, I got something out of that. You know what I mean? Yeah. So what I've learned to do is follow people that have something to teach me. And this is a problem with entrepreneurs, right? Because again, going back to that pride thing, we can be a pretty prideful bunch, right? And we don't like to think that somebody's going to teach us something, right? And a lot of times, when I was younger, I would surround myself by people that I was just teaching, right? Because it made me feel good. It made me feel like I was something special, right? Or whatever, pride it was filling me. And now I've learned, there are so many people, I want to be the dumbest guy in the room, right? It's so great to kind of listen. And so I follow these people that I might not admire everything about their life or whatever, or, there might be things that I don't necessarily align with, but by golly, Gary can teach me about marketing, right? That guy can teach me about, right? Yeah. And so these people.
No, go ahead. Finish up.
No, that's what I was going to say. So I've learned to try to emulate certain characteristics and strengths that everybody has. And also trying to be discerning enough to say, I need to be who I am, but I need to learn from others. I can never be so prideful that I can't learn from others, and even learn from people that you might not always agree with. And I think that's bad, that in America, we become very polarized, right? If I don't agree with everything that you say, then
you're against me. Yeah. Oh, I agree with you. And the discernment part is key, what you mentioned, and you touch on that, because, there's so much out there. There's so many books, and I sometimes I think, reading is kind of overrated as well, because there's so much information out there, and not everything that you read is going to serve you, right? It's not gonna do anything for you. But yeah, definitely, I think, and also with all the social media and video apps, you can get good content in 5 to 7 minutes with very knowledgeable people in that specific space or industry that you want, marketing or wholesaling, real estate, or whatever the case is. You can get great content without having to read a 180 page book. I agree with you. But I really like what you said about how you can learn from people, but remembering be you. Right? Not, and like you say, you don't have to agree with everybody, with everything is going on in their lives. So what is the next step for Devon? I mean, what's next for you? What's your next venture?
So it's interesting, right? Because my kids, as I shared, are all teenagers. One of them's out of the house right now in college. The other one's leaving next year. And then I'm going to have 2 that are, in high school and, soon starting to leave. And so that's actually what this whiteboard over there is all about, if you can see it, right? So that's what I'm doing right now, is I'm really writing up this next, era of my life. What's the next 10 years look like? Because I don't think it's going to look like the prior 10 years. I don't want it to. I want to evolve as a man. I want to evolve as a leader. I want to evolve as an entrepreneur. And what that means, I haven't figured out yet. I think that's the big question. The one thing I have done is I'm starting to do some similar stuff to you, where, I want to, I think I was sharing with you before the podcast started, I'll get a lot of phone calls where people want to have coffee with me, right? And they're like, hey, I have this idea for a business. What do you think? And so what I've done is, I've done this for years, right? Had this over and over and over again. And so I'm like, hey, I think there's this appetite out there for people that want like the basics of entrepreneurship. So right now I'm working on putting together a curriculum called the Whiteboard Entrepreneur, where it's basically a course where you can run through and, from I don't have an idea to I have an idea to I want to birth the idea, to pilot the idea, to start my company, grow my company, and just launch the whole thing, right? And so I've got a lot of passion around that, and within that I think there's a lot of baked in life skills and just adulting 101 lessons and stuff like that. But again, so I've been starting to put that together, and I've got a lot of passion and excitement around that. Now what God does with it and where it leads, who knows, right? But at the very least, it's therapeutic for me.
Now you just launched recently the Entrepreneur Whiteboard podcast, right? So tell me a little bit about that. What's that? I mean, that's part of this, right? Is part of this idea that you're trying to venture.
Yeah. So the podcast is kind of like things that have happened or impacted me that week that I feel like sharing with the world, right? And oftentimes, like I said, I try to be very transparent. And I think one of the problems with social media is that everyone's so polished, right? They show like, hey, look I made $35,000 before 11 a.m. selling an NFT. And if you're not doing that, you're an idiot, right?
Selling you a dream, yeah.
Exactly. And nobody feels good about themselves, right? And frankly, does that happen? Sure, it happens. And God bless those people. And I think there's a great message but like, I want to hear the transparency. What happened behind that? What happened yesterday, right? What happened tomorrow? Like, what are the good, the bad, and the ugly of it, right? Because that's what people need for their lives. Like, if you want to talk with someone about their marriage, you don't talk about like, hey, my wife and I have been married 25 years and every day's been perfect. No, like I've been married 25 years and every day's been wonderful. I'm glad we did, but like, it's not perfect, right? We're always working, we're always growing. And that's what helps people, right? If you're going to help people in their marriage, you have to be transparent. If you're going to help them in their business, you have to be transparent. And so the Whiteboard Entrepreneur podcast is really about me sharing my challenges, my wins, my losses, and trying to inspire people that they can do it, right? Like
despite of all the challenges and all the failures and the falls and transparency, I really like that. That's a great idea. I wish you the best on that concept. I think it's pretty cool, and I agree with you. I mean, social media just shows this dream of becoming instant multi-millionaire or billionaire and success overnight, and they don't show their I mean, what does it take to get there? And then people get this false idea that you can become like that overnight, and they forget that you got to put a lot of time and sacrifice and work and hours into anything.
Yeah, think of how depressing that would be, right? Like, as an entrepreneur, that you're out there grinding every day, and then you see some YouTube or TikTok of some 25-year-old kid, and God bless them, like, good for them, right? But getting off a private jet, wearing that $90,000 Rolex, hopping into his Bugatti or whatever. And it's like, I'm not saying that's not possible, right? Mm-hmm. But tell the whole story, right? Yeah. Tell what it takes to get there. Because we need the inspiration, but you have to understand the perspiration behind it, Yeah.
No, that's complete. I mean, it's true. I mean, it's there's a lot behind the scenes, and I like that that you were going to share that on your podcast. So anybody of our listeners, if you want to follow your podcast, you're in all the platforms as the Whiteboard Entrepreneur podcast. Great. Perfect. Well, we're coming almost to the end, Devon, of the interview, but I wanted to thank you for sharing your journey, the content, your story, amazing, information that you share with us today. So once again, thank you for coming, and we'll do a follow-up in a few months. I want to really know what's the next step for Devon.
That sounds great. And David, also congratulations on all your success. We've known each other for several years, and it's neat to see where people land, right? It's neat to see, again, the hard work really paying off. And congratulations on all your success, and best of luck to you, my friend.
I appreciate you, Devon, as well. Same to you, my friend.
Blessings, bud.
All right, man.